Hi everybody, before we get started, bit of housekeeping first. So it's the 4 Fs. So we're talking about fires, phones, fags and facilities. Fires, there are no fires planned for today. There are no fire alarms planned today either. So if it does go off, we need to head down to the corner of New Bond Street and Grafton Street, and we congregate by the Churchill statue. Where else? Phones, off or silent, please. Fags, you know it's outside. The world hates you. Facilities, you know where the facilities are? Downstairs by the main reception. Straight through, ladies and gents, both down on the ground floor. So I think that's all the housekeeping done. Right, so welcome. And welcome to you all, and welcome to this fabulous venue at the Royal Institution, where they say where science lives. It can be a surprise to nobody who knows us that, to be honest with you, both Nick and I have slightly science geeky tendencies. And so when the idea first came up of hosting here, well, and don't tell our procurement team, but we were going nowhere else. It was going to be, if we just had to do it here, we really did. And I mean, it's the home of the Christmas lectures, right? And how could we possibly resist coming here where, you know, those lectures happen? And in fact, I think today we're lucky to have 2 former Christmas lecture presenters here. So, you know, we talked about the ghosts of the Christmas lectures past. The Christmas lectures actually started in 1825, and it was a series of 15 lectures on the chemical history of candles. And they were really worried they hadn't quite done the subject sufficient justice. So they then did another 7 lectures in the following Easter and Whitsun, which I think you've probably got the hang of it by then. Thankfully, after that, someone said, you know what, I think perhaps a shorter series with a bit more demonstration-based lectures was the future. And that's how we got started with the Christmas lectures here. So the Royal Institution isn't just about trying to get kids into science, which is a very, very important thing to do. It also was the preeminent place to make scientific announcements and the key breakthroughs of the day. And so some of these breakthroughs that include electromagnetic rotation was first demonstrated here. Benzene was first announced here. The liquefaction of chlorine was first done here. Electromagnetism first demonstrated here. Photography was announced here. And that is just a selection of Michael Faraday's greatest hits. So I'm now going to go on. The Dewar flask, which I think if you're outside of science is the thermos flask, here. J.J. Thomson announced the fundamental particle that went on to be called the electron. Announced it here. Hydrogen was first liquefied, not here, but downstairs in the basement where the coffee shop is now. And I'll leave that up to you to work out whether you think that represents progress or not, but I don't know. So, if you're making announcements today, no pressure, guys. So, earlier, when I welcomed you, I said all. Now, all was a really important word there, and it's fantastic to see so many of you here representing so many different parts of what I call the plastics puzzle. And for me, if COVID taught us anything, I think that there were many things we learned from COVID, but I think chief amongst them were, 1, just how far it is possible to shove a stick up your nose. I mean, like, who knew? I mean, secondly, the importance of muting and unmuting at the right time. Still getting that wrong. But thirdly, and probably most importantly, the importance of events like this, where we can come together and discuss new ideas. And I think through discussing those ideas, we form the bonds that then allow us to collaborate, and collaborate effectively. And that's the difference here. Someone in UKRI said to me, he said, look, during lockdown, we really just traded on the half-lives of our previous relationships, which is such a UKRI thing to say, because at the same time, it's a bit nerdy, but also wonderful. And so I'm really keen on that insight. So do please take this opportunity to build back old friendships and make some new ones. We've intentionally built in quite a lot of networking into today's agenda. The SSPP team are all here today, and so please let us know if there's anything we can do to help make introductions or whatever. You can tell us normally by our good looks and rakish charm, but also we have logos on our badges. Obviously not the same logos, that would be too easy and just not the way we work in UKRI. But anyone with a logo is in the SSPP team. Looking at today's agenda, you'll actually see the agenda's pretty packed. And we have to leave on time because they need to get ready for a lecture this evening. So, speakers, I'm going to be sat over there during this morning. And so I have a not very subtle red card. If you see this card, speakers, it means you've got 30 seconds to wrap up. I'm sorry, but we just have to be that brutal on the time. Audience, please be back in your chairs on time. You were very good this morning, because I know with the coffee breaks and lunches, because when the doors are closed, coming back in is quite disruptive. So if you're late, you're up in the gallery of shame, I'm afraid, okay? So be aware. So the actual plan for today, after I've done the few little intros, I'm then going to ask Duncan, who is the Senior and Responsible Officer for SSPP, to make some opening remarks. Then we have this was much easier to write than say, 3 themed sessions to announce the winners of our latest competition. And we'll also have Q&A slots after each of those sessions. Those sessions are going to be very quick, very rapid fire. We'll hear no more than 3 minutes from each of those speakers, so it has to be really, really quick to get the idea. After that, Sally from the KTN is going to take us through a session on the power of collaboration. And at the end, then Sally will demonstrate or explain to us how the semi-structured networking lunch is going to work. After lunch, Mike Biddle, who is the Executive Chair of Innovate UK's Net Zero domain, will set the context for our 2 panel sessions in the afternoon. The first of which is going to be chaired by Margaret and is dedicated to plastics and net zero. The second will be chaired by Paula Chin and will address the UN Plastics Treaty, so 2 fairly minor things that are going on in plastics at the moment. We really want both of those sessions to be really interactive. So do please get stuck in, both with your questions, but also any comments and views, right? Because this is very much a 2-way dialogue we want to have here. After that, Nick is going to bring our session to a close. Now, those of you who know Nick know he doesn't really like to talk. And so we'll see if we can coax a few short, concise, pithy, to the point, focused closing remarks from Nick, and hopefully we'll then finish it on time at 5 o'clock. As I previously mentioned, we do need to leave fairly early, or promptly, I should say, and we'd very much appreciate your help with that. And finally, from me, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Pat and the SSPP team for making today happen. I'd also like to thank them, NERC, KTN, the wider Innovate UK and UKRI teams for everything that they do to make SSPP what it is. None of this would be possible without their skill and expertise and dedication. It's now my great pleasure to invite Professor Sir Duncan Wingham to open the proceedings properly. Thank you very much. Enjoy the day.
So thank you very much, Paul. I'm not quite sure I understand what properly means, but I'll do my best. And you're not there with your red card, so you're going to have to just wing it. Anyway, morning to everybody, and let me offer you my welcome. It's a great pleasure to speak here in this very august institution. I thought I might just start with just a few words about how we got where we are. And that is material because I'll end up in where we're going to. Plastics' origin was essentially the creative use of hydrocarbon back in the day. And although plastics aren't inexpensive themselves, they are very easy to form into artifacts at low temperatures. And also, it's proved possible to give them all kinds of different properties, whether these are thermal properties or transport properties or whatever they happen to be. And so, over the last 50 years, plastics have become completely ubiquitous everywhere. And all you have to do is just think what would happen if I immediately took all the plastic away out of this room. You wouldn't be sitting in your seats, for example. The lights would fall out, and so on. So the ubiquity of plastic is everywhere. And all of those properties means it's also become a marvelous material for packaging. It's low density and you can create high volume with it, and of course you can form it. So all of these things means that packaging has become dominated by plastics, and particularly single-use plastics. But this has occurred at the same time as we've moved into a throw-it-away society. It's not just true of plastics, although it's particularly true of plastics. It's also true, for example, of clothing. I remember some years ago talking about this to a group of people in Bristol, and I said, raise your hand if you've darned a sock. Unfortunately, one person at the back put their hand up, and I didn't mean to single them out, but all I was doing was illustrating the way in which we've moved over the last 30 years from a society that did its best to maintain things over long periods of time to one that just throws things away. And that's particularly been true of plastics. And as is often, almost invariably actually the case with the environment, the manufacturers, producers of these materials don't concern themselves terribly with the end fate. So we've got a system of manufacturing and using these materials ill-matched to a waste industry and a recycling industry. So we arrive where we are today, which is, roughly speaking, 8 Wembley stadiums a year of plastics into the ocean, just to give you some idea of sort of volumes involved. This is the context, actually, in which two things happened almost simultaneously. One was the broadcasting by the BBC of the Blue Planet programme. Plastics, someone like me coming from NERC, the plastics in the environment have been known about and discussed for at least 25 years. But that programme transformed the broad understanding, at least in this country, of what the impact of plastics was on the environment. And it's almost coincidental to that was the announcement of the Wave 3 ISCF challenge. For those of you who might know, there were more than 300 bids to that challenge. And I myself remember chairing a session where we triaged 100 proposals or so down to the 10 that went into the final competition. And this program was one of those that entered that competition. If it was challenged, and it was, the challenge was around convincing people that a program like this could make a difference. And that was mainly because of the fact that plastics is complicated, and to deal with these problems, you have to deal with the entire chain all the way through from manufacture right to the end, waste collection and recycling. And there was a certain amount of skepticism that the program could be successful. On the other hand, I think two things made big difference. One was just the recognition of the importance of the UK responding to this problem and bringing together its research and innovation community to do it. And the second was the engagement with RAP, which allowed us to link very clearly the goals of this program to the plastic pack. It's a great pleasure to see Marcus, you with us today. You will remember those early discussions. What I would say is, from my perspective, and if you want to know what my role is, it's by and large to raise the money. From my perspective, this program has been a tremendous success, quite outstanding success. And for someone like me, for whom this was a twinkle in the eye 5 years ago, whenever it was, it's really been a pleasure to just see how the programs move forward. And at least in, I would say, 2 dimensions. One is the bringing together of the entire research and innovation community and embracing every activity, right from long-range research all the way through to near-market activity and upscaling with large demonstrators. And we have embraced all of those activities. And the second dimension is the way in which the program has addressed that challenge of the complexity of the manufacturing, supply, packaging, and waste challenge from all its aspects. We are supporting the world's first food-grade PP recycling, and we are also supporting the first in the UK commercial size demonstrator of chemical recycling. And a number of the projects of this program have been given awards, even at the global level. And so by any measure, you can think of this program as being successful. In addition, this program was given the biggest co-investment challenge of all of those Wave 3 programs. We felt it was a bit unfair at the time. I didn't understand why we were being singled out. However, this program has also been one of the most successful in achieving that, and we have matched, although match isn't quite the right word, of the order of 60 million of public funding with over 220 million of private investment. So there's been a tremendous response, not just from the research and innovation community, but from business as well. And it demonstrates to me the commitment actually that everybody has when faced with these problems of the environment, and that's not unusual, but it is again, I just make the observation that's what we see here. So as I say, tremendous successful, and not the least of those successes is to bring together in the way that we are today all of the communities associated with that. So we built the community. I think that we could thank particularly the KTN in helping us build that community. And maybe I could also take this opportunity to give my thanks to Paul and the team, because that success is not in least part due to you as well. So the future has two aspects, I suppose. One is about what's going to happen in the world, and then the other thing that's my job, which is to think about how we get more money. Just on the first of these, I visited recently a petrochemical research laboratory, and what was really, really clear from all of their activity is that their focus is what to do with all this carbon that they'd otherwise have to leave in the ground. So what do we do with it? And most petrochemicals' favorite answer to that question is to turn it into polymer. So big oil majors are seeing polymers of the future of their carbon stocks. And everybody knows probably, I mean, we anticipate, for example, a change from something like 8% of oil use today to around about 35% by 2050. We also know that not only is macroscopic plastics causing all sorts of havoc in the environment, so is microscopic plastic. And there's a growing realization of the linkage between plastics and, for example, clothing. Equally, if all that plastic is incinerated or happily composted, what you'll do is you'll convert a plastics pollution problem into a CO2 problem. And if we're talking about 35% of the then production, that's a big problem. So I've just got a red card. What I want to say firstly is that this problem is not going away, and it gets bigger. So we can't stop. We've got to go on innovating. And the second thing I wanted to say is that in my job, which is essentially making pitches for more money, it's really important that you don't make the same pitch. And so I think that the thing that we should be talking about is to move a little bit away from recycling per se and concentrate more on the question of how do we decarbonize plastic. In detail, these may actually not be too different actually as activities, but I think reframing the problem that way gives us the best chance of finding more public investment in order to build on these splendid achievements of everyone here. So with that, let me officially open the proceedings, Paul. Thank you very much.
Okay, are we on? So, morning everyone. My name is Gavin Lewis. I'm an innovation lead on the SSPP team. And I have 3 jobs apparently in the next 2 minutes. One is to try and maintain a high level of energy in the audience. No promises, Paul. 2, a quick explanation on what an innovation lead does for those of you that are not familiar with the role. And 3, just explain how this session is going to work. So the innovation lead, basically we are involved in understanding the problems, specifically in an SSPP context here. There are 3 of us on the team, helping to design competitions and shepherd that whole process. But then most importantly, we work with the projects once they're up and running to support and to try and make sure that they get the best from the whole experience and that ultimately the idea has the biggest potential to survive afterwards and do really well. And as part of the SSPP, we also kind of pull all of the pieces together to try and bring additional benefit through the whole network. This session is going to, we've got 3 of these this morning and they're kind of grouped thematically. So this session is around recycling and recyclability, vaguely. So the way it's going to work is that I am going to hand over to each of the representatives. We've got 5 projects represented here. They're going to give you 3 minutes on who they are and a quick kind of elevator pitch on what the project's about. And then at the end of that, there's going to be a few minutes of Q&A. So without any further ado, the microphone is there. Contestant number 1.
Contestant number 1. So I've written this down because I understand how threatening Paul can be with his red card, so I don't go over 3 minutes. So let me introduce myself. My name's David Landsberg. I'm the creator and founder of Litter Lotto. Litter Lotto is a behavioural change app that rewards people for binning litter, and of course any litter on the ground is a lost recycling opportunity. It's quite a simple app to use. You simply take a picture as you bin litter, and straight away you get into a jackpot prize draw of £1,000 every week. And each time you bin litter, it counts as an extra entry. So the more litter you bin, the more opportunities you've got to win. So as well as jackpot entries, you can win glitter coins on the way, which are redeemable for all sorts of things. So we've been going for just a little over a year, and we're just about to see our 8 millionth piece of litter bin through the app. I'll just wait for that round of applause. Thank you very much. We make our money from big brands that want to partner with us, that want to demonstrate that they're addressing the issues. So, for example, in the UK, we're working with McDonald's. We're just about to announce a partnership with KFC in South Africa. And also, we work with a lot of councils who we geo-fence to run localised offers as well. So we talked to a lot of councils, and we found that the biggest problem they have is contamination, or recycling, particularly contamination. So it turns out we're either putting too little in our recycling bins, so a lot of us not remembering to put our bathroom plastics in there, or we're putting too much in there, which is wish cycling. We're hoping or assuming that what we put in there is going to be recycled eventually, which of course it's not, and it contaminates the batch. So seeing as we're about behavioural change, we thought, well, how can we address this? So thankfully, with the innovation grant we've got, we're launching a system called At Home. It's basically, within the app, we're releasing more gamification to get users to go the extra mile. We can see that we can get them to pick up litter, let's get them to go the extra mile, and sort their recycling waste at home. So effectively, what we're going to be doing is incentivising people to put more of the right stuff in their recycling bin and educating them not to put the wrong stuff in their recycling bin, because those won't count as entries into the jackpot draw. We're hoping that, well, we're not hoping, we're on schedule to do it later this year with our launch partner, which is Buckinghamshire Council. So there'll be a lot of winners in Buckinghamshire just for recycling. I can see the red card, I'm nearly done. We're calling it At Home, and we're really excited to be launching it with Buckinghamshire Council. And thank you to Innovation for helping us make this possible. Thank you.
Thanks. My name's Ben, and I'm the co-founder of Circular 11. We take plastic that would otherwise go to incineration, and we turn it into low-carbon building products. In particular, timber alternatives that are used in the outdoor timber product sector. So think outdoor furniture, landscaping products, decking, light shelters. The use of recycled plastic in these sectors is increasingly common, but just like in other manufacturing sectors, most of the plastic that's used needs to be very highly segregated and purified before using it. And everyone in manufacturing is competing for the same limited stock of highly separable plastics. The problem is that common segregation technology used by recycling facilities that don't use Recycle-I tend to have very low yield rates when they try and separate. So float sink tanks will often only recycle about 50% of plastics effectively. The rest is a sink material that's just a sludge of different types of polymer blends. The thing is, these polymers are really usable, and so we take them in and we design composite blends out of them to turn them into building products. So essentially we'll strengthen them, we'll blend them together using compatibilizers, and we'll target the blends depending on what the input stream is. So we often work with recyclers directly to take their waste streams and turn them into products. We already have a manufacturing plant in Dorset, and this is all well and good, but to make this scalable, we need to shift from making products to scaling the manufacturing process so that much bigger manufacturers can do the same thing. And this means that we need to automate the whole process. The really technical challenge is that the input streams that we use, they change from day to day and week to week because we're precisely dealing with the mixed streams, which aren't the same. We can counter that using our process by basically adjusting the ratios of everything that we put in. We chemically profile what comes in really quickly. So we have the data to do it, but to automate the adjustment, it's called dynamic formulation, is a real challenge. And so we've finally moved into a new facility last month, and we're really excited to start this project because it allows us to work on the kind of compounding technology and everything else we need to automate the whole thing. So especially as a startup in hardware, it's really difficult for me to imagine getting to where we've got to already without Innovate UK grant funding. There's so much testing that needs to happen, and we just don't have the revenue for it ourselves. So massively privileged to be a recipient of the award, and we're going to try and run with it as far as we can. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Ben, for the name drop as well. So as Ben mentioned, I'm from Recycle-I. I'm the head of partnerships there, and Recycle-I is a growing technology company that applies computer vision, machine learning, and automated sorting to the waste industry. Our first innovation, Recycle-I Vision, is a AI-powered computer vision system that replicates the power of human vision. And to do so, it provides an automated image-based detection of individual items in commingled waste streams. So actually, our very first Innovate UK grant helped us to augment that system with a robotic arm, and thus Recycle-I Robotics was born, which is an automated waste separating solution. This solution is deployed today across the UK and Europe, and it handles rigid plastic very well, flexible and films less so, and there's a big industry demand at the moment for machinery that can adequately manipulate and handle the problems posed by film and flexible packaging. Today's MRFs, material recovery facilities, are not really designed to handle flexibles in that way, and so the standard procedure is manual picking, which obviously is not an economically viable way of scaling up that kind of procedure. So we are using this latest Innovate UK grant, which our project is called Gripper, for the Gripper Innovation for Picking Recyclables, to enhance our capabilities to also manipulate film packaging in the same way that we can manipulate rigid packaging. So this requires a hardware overhaul of how our gripping solution works, but also how our pneumatic system works, which is how we power Recycler robotics. So as you can imagine, small bits of film packaging can also easily get caught, not just in our robotic solution, but in previous machinery involved in material recovery facilities. That causes blockages, downtime, massive efficiency loss. So what we're hoping to achieve with the Gripper project is to deliver an AI-powered robotic sorting solution that, one, enables the manipulation of film flexible packaging, two, reduces the blockages caused by film and flexible packaging, but also can automatically detect when a system is blocked and then can automatically unblock it equally. As such, this should help us deliver the first AI-driven multi-stream robotic sorter, which can also manipulate flexible packaging. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gary Minari. I'm from Blow Molding Technologies. I'm the CTO of Blow Molding Technologies, and we develop innovative technology for the packaging industry, enabling companies to achieve their sustainability goals. Our main focus, and specifically for this project, is on plastic bottles. Plastic bottles are manufactured at a rate of 1 million per minute, and contribute a lot to the environmental problem, the plastic waste problem that we see today. And it's an industry worth 130 billion worldwide, globally. Focus of our project is to develop a virtual design tool so that we can optimize the design of these plastic bottles. So we want to be able to design the bottle in a virtual environment to stop the traditional trial and error methods that are currently used. With this virtual design tool, we can optimize the bottle to ensure it meets all its service performance requirements. For example, if you drop the bottle, you don't want the contents to burst. If you have a shelf life of the bottle, you want to be able to predict that shelf life to ensure your Coke doesn't go flat over a certain amount of time. So we do this in a virtual environment, which saves all the trial and error and expense associated with that. Use that using technology, combining our knowledge and expertise in artificial intelligence, simulation, mathematical modeling. We combine all of those together along with our expertise in instrumentation and measurement. An idea of the project then is that ultimately we use this simulation tool to manufacture plastic bottles with just the right amount of material to minimize the amount of waste. So that's where we're targeting. We're trying to optimize the amount of plastic usage, but also it has benefits going beyond that in terms of the use of recycled PET. You've heard about the speakers just speaking this morning about the contamination of RPET. So when you're using recycled PET, you have a lot more variability in materials. So that needs to be designed for, and we can, as part of this project, we're developing a very simple protocol that you can test the material very quickly, run it through our simulation tools, and then predict how much material you're going to need in that bottle to meet the design requirements. Also, another big development is the use of bio-based materials, so bio-based ingredients or biodegradable materials, so when you actually dispose of them, that they're actually degrade in the environment itself. Again, our use of our standard protocol, we'll be able to do the tests on these, simple tests on these materials, run through our simulation, and then design a bottle for the corresponding new material development. And that's really a game changer for the industry because they rely a lot on the expertise and knowledge, which is they have a lot of in use of PET, but not so much of in use of bio-based materials. I just see the red card there. So I'll just say in terms of the impact, really we're going to reduce the use of material and energy usage in the plastic bottle industry. We're going to expect to see a greater uptake of bio-based materials. And just to give you an idea of the scale, 1 gram saving of PET globally will save 150 million tons of CO2.
Thanks. I'm Will Tom. I'm here representing Stopford, who are a multidisciplinary engineering and technology firm based in the Northwest. And we are working with the Alduri Group at the University of Birmingham to co-develop a chemical recycling technology that uses supercritical water to selectively depolymerize waste plastics and convert them into constituent monomers that are suitable for drop into primary plastics manufacture. This project is an 18-month techno-economic feasibility study to extend the platform technology and our collaboration to PET. The motivation for that is the great usefulness and circular potential for PET, which is ubiquitous in consumer packaging, but chronically under-recycled. I believe in the UK in 2021, the gross recovery rate was less than 50%, which on the face of it is surprising because mechanical recycling is well established. But the challenge is that although mechanical recycling is well able to handle certain waste streams, others, such as laminates, composites, contaminated and colored plastics, are quite awkward. And this is where chemical recycling has a role to play. By breaking the polymers down into their fundamental building blocks, we're able to perform separation and cleanup steps and end up with a high quality product that can be used for drop into primary plastics manufacture. That has two important effects. Firstly, you're able to preserve the value of packaging materials, which allows food packaging material to be reconverted into food packaging material rather than allowing it to cascade down the value chain. Secondly, by generating feedstocks from recyclate, we're able to supplant or displace fossil fuel-derived feedstocks and partially decarbonize plastic production. So it's a win-win. Of course, the devil's in the details, and there are some specific challenges, technical challenges associated with chemically recycling PET. In particular, achieving effective separation at the end of the process, and also a sufficiently selective conversion to the right product. We've made a number of technical innovations already that we hope will, during the course of this project, allow us to unlock a truly circular process for PET. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're going to need that. Okay, so Q&A time. So does anyone have any questions for our applicants?
That was easy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. Coffee time? Hang on, we've got a mic coming. We've got a couple of mics actually. So if you put your hands up, then we can. Yep. Okay.
Okay, I'm Sophie from Disposal. I've got a question about the Litter Lotto and the working with the councils. So I'm interested to know. So you're working with Buckinghamshire, who are lovely, and I guess if you're working council to council, it's easy for them to give you the data about the recycling in their local authority area. If you wanted to scale it wider so that you weren't having to go council to council, you'd need that data in a kind of standardised fashion. Do you have any plans to try and sort that out? And if you do, please, I would love to do that with you. So,
You just got the job. Baby steps. So yes, the first thing exactly, we're working with Buckinghamshire Council. We know their recycling rates. They're actually amongst the highest in the UK, so we haven't set ourselves an easy challenge. But once we've got the data from that, we will use that data to sell into other councils. And yes, we will, as we work with each one, we'll monitor their data too. But we're always open to collaboration. I think that's where our strength is. So absolutely, be delighted to work with you.
Yep.
Is there a tie-up?
Oh, hold on one second.
Sorry, Philip Moore, British Plastics Federation. I'm thinking specifically of Litter Lotto. Is there a tie-up with the Department for Education? Because if we're talking about, behavioural issues, then clearly the education system, children, what they're exposed to in schools, is a key determinant of that. I mean, you could say for the whole body of projects that are being developed here, the educational part of implementation, I'd see pretty critical. I mean, would you agree with that?
That's a very important point, yeah. I mean, litter waste, it starts, with the youth and even younger, actually. So we need to educate as young as possible. The app is really designed, because of the reward mechanism we've got in place, for, the app stores allow it to be used by 13 plus age groups. Because of the sorts of prizes we give away. But we are actually, one of our programs is to develop an under 13 version, particularly for schools, so we can incentivise teachers with lesson plans to encourage and engage with the children to go out, understand litter picking, understand the process of where the waste ends up, and separating it at home too.
Okay.
Hi, Julian Tate from Open Data Manchester, and this is a question really to the gentleman from Stopford. You talk about the challenges of plastics that have additives and composites. So when you've created this process, are you trying to identify what these additives and composites are before they get processed, or are you just agnostic to whatever you receive and it just the process breaks down and separates anyway?
It will need to be a bit of both. So we're still in development stage. It's a really good question, by the way. And that is the fundamental challenge that any chemical recycling process takes, is the heterogeneity of the waste. And you need to essentially define an operational envelope of waste that you can tolerate. And you want that to be as broad as possible. But you're trying to achieve a specific end product. And process chemistry can only do so much magic. So we sort of have to work iteratively to square both sides of the circle.
Okay.
Good morning. Jeff Mackey, Plastics Europe. One comment and one question, if I may. Regarding the comment, there's actually an alliance of researchers in education being launched on Thursday at the Guildhall. So if you're interested in more information on that, working with the Multi-Academy Trusts, I'll happily supply that. My question, actually across the panel, if I may, the UK policy drivers for recycling have always been a challenge. Would you like to share with us one or two policy blocks or opportunities that perhaps some of us can go away and talk about?
Purely from a selfish perspective, I love it that no two councils seem to be aligned on their recycling requirements, which gives us a bigger opportunity because we want to educate people on exactly what it is that goes in each bin. But I do think that is a massive issue in the UK. The fact that there is no, that every council has its own rules. That needs to be changed.
Yeah, if I could, the opacity in the sector is such a challenge. We're speaking to heads of councils in the recycling department, so they don't know exactly what's being recycled and what's not. Sometimes we have people at very senior positions in large recycling companies, and we'll have specific questions around, let's say, rPET, and they won't know whether this gets recycled or that gets recycled, and it depends on the week or it depends on the month. But there's what feels like, and I'd love to be wrong about this, and correct me if someone knows, that it's very difficult to get granular information about incineration streams. The only way that we can do it is by going to the people who are paying to send their plastic to Belgium to get incinerated, because not many UK incinerators like it. So they know where what they're incinerating. But upstream, it's so difficult, and it would be way, way easier if we had a reporting system. So that's where I would go.
For us, working within material recovery facilities, there are a lot of policy decisions that affect how we operate, so I could probably be here for a long time if I went through all of them. I think a big one at the minute is obviously the introduction of deposit return schemes. So on one hand, we'll need to see how that changes the composition of material streams within MRFs once that's really rolled out. But equally, we're seeing that MRFs should also be able to access the deposit return scheme and get the monetary reward for example, sorting out plastic bottles. So that's an opportunity for our system hugely. Similarly with EPR, we've read in the report that they're looking to bring in automated quality control and assurance, which obviously is another area of opportunity for our computer vision system. So we're quite fortunate that as much as there's some opacity in general, there are also a lot of opportunities for us. It's just hard to keep on top of them.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest drivers for us has been the legislation, because it's put a lot of pressure on big brand owners like PepsiCo and Coke, Unilever, etc., to incorporate more recycled content. So it's been a big driver for our business. It's enabled them to fast track. They want to fast track the incorporation of recycled content into their bottles, and they're in connection with us to try and make it happen. So for us, it's been a positive.
Thanks. Yeah, so for chemical recyclers, I think the big one is how is chemical recyclate treated from a policy perspective, whether it counts as a blend into feedstocks that are used in primary plastics manufacture, or whether you have to use only chemically recycled material. Currently, there's not a huge incentive for manufacturers to use chemical recyclate, which is an issue.
Okay, I think we've got about a minute left. If there are any last quick questions? Yep. And then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. I'm Marcus Gover. I was RAP, but I'm now with the Minderoo Foundation. And I wanted to ask you about your views on the international potential of this, because we're doing quite well in the UK. I'm struck how well we're doing in the UK from the past. But when I look to the world, and some research we've just done which shows just 2% of single-use plastic is made from recycled content, if you look globally. All the growth that's come in single-use plastic has come from flexibles. And I'm hearing some solutions from some of you which the world could probably do with, but how quickly are you going to be ready to go to the world with these?
Yep.
Yeah, so I mentioned for us at Recycli, we're already deployed in a few other European countries, so Italy, France, Belgium in particular. A big hurdle that we're seeing is it's actually the cost of manual labor. That's a big bottleneck for deploying these solutions in other countries. For example, just looking at Spain, Portugal, Greece, where the cost of labor is so low that the ROI is not quite there to implement these kind of automated systems. So even though the sort of wins of these systems are huge, still from a pure cost point of view, it's not so easy in all the countries.
Quickly.
All right, very quickly. We're similarly in discussions with multinational conglomerate recyclers. We want this to be a process control technology. But one thing which made me start the company as a founder was working on waste management projects in Nepal. And I feel like emerging market recycling systems is something that we should all be actively discussing as well when we're talking about scalability. So I appreciate the question. There are amazing recycling companies in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan that we know, but the access to investment is very low. And I feel like that's where license-based interventions would be really powerful. We're not going to be there for another 18 months, but that's what gets us out of bed. So kind of looking at where open burning happens, it's all in emerging markets. 40% of plastic is openly burnt, and that is not happening in the UK. So just to say, I appreciate the question.
Okay. Thanks.
20 seconds.
20 seconds I've got. Okay, so I'm passionate about the emerging markets, and of course, waste is a problem there more than anywhere in the world. We actually developed a system that particularly works for emerging markets where there are rag pickers as well that we need to take into account, and the existing income that they get. We've developed something, but we just, we need to scale up a little bit before we've got the funding and the ability to go over there and spread our solution.
Lovely. All right. Thank you very much. Can we have a quick round of applause for... All right. Thanks very much. Next up, Sarah.
Right, everybody, in the interest of keeping things moving quickly, I am delighted to be introducing this next session. So this competition called for future plastic packaging solutions. So we're going to be hearing from projects talking about their innovations related to materials and measurements. So if we think about novel materials, we know that moving away from conventional plastics and transitioning to a future where plastics are not derived from fossil fuel-based feedstocks is going to require a fundamental step change in how we do things. And we're going to hear from some projects looking at the role that novel materials can play, the enhanced functionality that they might be able to offer. But how do they do this without interfering with the existing waste management system? Key question. to think about, keep in mind, keep telling us about, hint. And if they are going to play a role in a circular plastics economy in future, how is it going to work? How are we going to scale that? So those will be some of the things that these projects will be starting to explore. But also, from a measurement point of view, why are we interested in that? Well, if you haven't heard, there was a small thing called a UN Plastics Treaty launched. This is aiming to eliminate plastic waste globally and plastic pollution. So really, we see measurement as a key part of that. We need to understand what is the baseline at the moment. Where do we have hotspots of plastic pollution? Where is it coming from? What are these plastic flows? And to do that, we have to be able to measure, monitor, and map existing plastic pollution. So we see measurement as a key part of a future where we actually have significantly reduced plastic pollution. So we'll be hearing from one of our projects that we're funding to look into that as well. And we'll hear more about the UN Plastics Treaty in the session this afternoon. And I think I will now give our projects a brief reminder. We're looking for you to be sharp on content, and we will be strict on time. So without no further ado, I'm going to ask Roderick to start and introduce his project. Welcome, Roderick.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to listen to us. And thank you to the entire team of SSPP for awarding us this incredible prize. We are thrilled, and we've already started working on our project with the team. So I am Roderick Thackeray, and in charge of the commercial elements of Al Green. So my primary role is to build partnerships with large organizations that have a requirement and a need for our product, and also I have the enviable task of fundraising when that's required as well, and building out the commercial team to support the customers that we have. So what is the problem? Well, as we all know, polyurethane is a massive problem in this world of ours, and about 8% of all plastics is polyurethane. So Al Green have developed over a period of many, many years of research a bio-based alternative to polyurethane. So it comes in many forms, and the use cases are quite wide, and I'll touch on some of them. So essentially, our product sets fall into three primary categories. One is coatings, which can be used in fashion, in packaging. It can be used as an alternative to plastic film in food packaging. Adhesives, which are used in all sorts of products, including packaging, automotive. So a great example is a car seat, for example, is glued with oil-based glue. And even if you have a recycled piece of packaging, if it's using adhesives made from an oil-based product, it renders it impossible to recycle. And our third product is foam. So those three product sets, so coatings, adhesives, and foams, are omnipresent in almost everything that you see or touch. I mean, you're sitting on it right now. So our bio-based version of those three products have been developed by very clever chemical engineers using essentially plant waste. So we are building relationships with, as I say, large organizations who have a requirement for these types of products. I'm being very carded. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Roderick.
Hello, I'm James Ravenscroft, and I'm project manager at Zampler. So Zampler is a spin-out from the University of Cambridge, and our mission is to replace the most polluting plastics with high-performance alternatives that are bio-based and biodegradable. So some of our applications include flexible films, coatings, and microcapsules. And we actually have another project with SSPP looking at flexible films. But this project specifically is going to be looking at development of plant protein-based coatings for paper and paperboard applications. So the main issue this project is addressing is lots of paperboard packaging. They contain a coating layer. So these coatings, they provide barrier properties against things such as grease and water. But the issue is the coating's often derived from synthetic polymers. That means it's non-biodegradable, non-renewable, and can produce microplastics. Furthermore, the coating layer can often interfere with paperboard recycling. We've talked about a lot of recycling already. And that's because this coating sort of seeps into the fibres and it's difficult to separate. So that makes recycling more expensive and less efficient. So even emergent technologies such as PLA or PHA, they may offer bio-based alternatives to synthetic polymers for coatings, but they actually have the same issue where they interfere in the recycling. So what Zampler have innovated is a new coating material made from plant proteins. So the material is obviously bio-based and biodegradable, so therefore compatible with home and industrial compost waste streams. But the coating can also be water-soluble, which means under the conditions of recycling processing, it can be washed away, similar to food residuals. And this means the coating can be effectively separated from the paperboard packaging. So the main technical challenge of this project, obviously, is we want a coating that has good water resistance in use, but is also soluble when under the conditions of recycling processing. So that's the main technical challenge we're going to be working on this project. So we'll then scale up the casting of our coating onto the paperboard as a drop-in solution using existing manufacturing lines. So the applications we intend to launch this product in are single-use takeaway trays and boxes used in the food service industry. But the coating is also suitable for many other fast-moving consumer goods applications in food contact packaging and cosmetic packaging.
Hi, I'm Lucy Hughes. I am the founder and creator of Marinatex, which is a startup developing a new material made from seafood waste and red algae, designed as a planet-conscious alternative to single-use plastic films. So this project will be running a 13-month project called IFF COPAC, very catchy, which stands for In-Flight Flexible Film Consumer Packaging. So the foundations for this project was actually laid back in 2020 when we were approached by a supplier to the airline industry who essentially were appalled with the amount of plastic that they have to create to package their products that they would supply to the airline industry. And essentially they are very wedded to plastic. The product has to be transparent, so for safety reasons. So the items that are entering the plane, you can see if there's any nefarious objects. It has to be obviously hygienic. So the products that they're wrapping can be essentially not marked by any other products or any bacteria. So if you think about earplugs and toothpaste and toothbrushes, all those products need to be clean. And also the product needs to be, or the packaging needs to be lightweight, which for flights, obviously that's a direct implication onto carbon. So those are the three kind of main areas that it needs to be, which so far is why they've been very wedded to the idea of plastic. We are looking to replace that with a circular alternative that uses a waste product and also can be composted in both an aerobic and anaerobic conditions. Another part of the project, so a big deliverable of this project, will be developing a small-scale manufacturing rig, which will be developing 1,200 products for this, which will then be tested in the airline industry with the airlines and their customers. But also we'll be looking at doing a package around the life cycle of the product. So we'll be conducting an LCA. We'll also be looking at soil toxicity, and also be conducting workshops with airports and airline industries that will be able to kind of really take a deep dive into their existing waste collection and how Marinatex will effectively fit into that. So we're super excited to start the project and hear about the rest of the projects as well. Thank you so much, Innovate UK, for the opportunity.
Hi, my name is Keith Damerel. I'm the founder and managing director of Sustainable Packaging Products Limited, SPP for short, not to be confused with SSPP. Our company, which is a startup based in the city of Lincoln, in Lincolnshire, although I live in London and we started just before COVID, so 6 months of living in a camp bed didn't help me, but anyway, here we are. We're focusing on the development and supply of barrier-coated papers and boards as alternatives to plastics. Excuse me. So all of our materials are conventionally recyclable and marine disintegratable and biodegradable. So our project here is to develop and commercialize a conventionally recyclable, biodegradable paper-based material that will provide an alternative to single-use plastic packaging for frozen food, bags and pouches. So this will be done using an innovative new super high-strength paper, and that will be combined with a new water-based biodegradable coating that provides the heat seal properties needed, combined with very high water vapor and grease resistance. So the material is designed to work with the existing form, fill and seal machinery that's out there today. And if you look in the freezer compartment of any retailer, you'll find that for frozen chips, hash browns, vegetables, it's all in plastic packaging. And we believe that this will perform an alternative to all of that plastic packaging, but will be conventionally recyclable and biodegradable. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gianmarco Sanfratello. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Plan C, Turning the Tide on Plastic Pollution. Well, thank you very much for inviting us today, and we were so excited to hear that Innova UK has offered us the grant for this competition, round 2. So the project is called Plan C Pack, and is a project built on a previous Innova UK project, of course, and will be run by the same consortium, so led by Plan C and in collaboration with Oleo, self-care product distributor in the UK, and Biocomposite Centre at Bangor University, expert in biomaterial research. So Plan C Pack is an innovative water-soluble packaging solution to replace a single-use plastic within the self-care industry. So we're talking about to replace shampoo bottles, conditioners, and such thing. So just, I'm not going to talk about the plastic pollution. We already had a quite good intro for that, but just thinking that over 1,000 million plastic bottles are discarded in the UK every year. And we know that almost 30% of these ends up in our ocean, creating microplastic and affecting the ecosystems. So Plan C Pack is an innovative packaging solution that drastically reduces plastic bottle circulation, introducing a waste-free solution for single-use and concentrated refill options for personal care product, as I say, the shampoo, conditioning, balms, oils, and so on. So this packaging concept fostered the refill system, packaging system, and it directly replaced plastic with this innovative Plan C seaweed-derived material, which dissolves in water after use, contains not petroleum derivatives, and creates no waste, no microplastics, and no harm to the environment. So within this project, we will tackle some of the technical challenges that we identified essentially last year with this previous project. We will, this time, we will complete a full life cycle analysis to build a robust model to assessing these technologies against alternatives, particularly. And we also conduct a consumer behavior and design research to assess the consumer acceptance of this new packaging, and also look at design for the packaging for transport or to dispense it potentially at home. Our goal is to bring the product to commercialization. So we target 5% of the UK household market within the next. Yes, I'm talking a lot. I know about that. But just let me say that please come along to the stand, have a look at the pods. Feel free to try them if you're craving for a shampoo, and just ask me any question about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm James from Plastic Eye, and it's our mission as a company to really create a stable and just marine environment that can be shared with future generations. We're doing this by creating technology that really unlocks the potential and enables solutions to marine plastic pollution. We provide actionable, powerful insights that can help define evidence-based policies and plan strategic interventions to stop plastic flowing into the ocean, and also to boost the efficiency of cleanup operations. We are developing a platform, and it uses satellite technology and machine learning, artificial intelligence to create maps and metrics about marine plastic pollution on a global scale. We're able to identify hotspots where plastic is entering the marine environment and where it's accumulating. And we're also able to provide and establish a baseline of plastic pollution in any particular region, and then monitor how that changes over time. Now, why is this important? It's kind of the old adage, so you need to really understand a problem or a crisis, in this case, to find the solutions to it. And we are developing a tool which is really going to provide deeper insights and understanding of anthropogenic pollution of the oceans. And then we'll be able to monitor changes to that and the efficacy of any interventions that are made. This is especially important with the backdrop of the UN Plastics Treaty coming into force next year, with member states under legal obligations to end plastic pollution by 2040. And this tool will provide real assistance in helping them plan their strategies and then provide evidence of their impact over time as well. Super excited to be undertaking this Innovate UK project and to be part of this community as well. So thank you very much.
Right, we now have some time for questions for these projects. So if you do have a question, please raise your hand and one of the roving mics will make its way to you.
A question for Plastic Eye. So this is really cool. I was just at Mike Shaver, University of Manchester, sorry. I was just at the World Plastic Summit, and I met some fascinating people who are doing work in everywhere from the Philippines to Chile, looking at, how do you go and collect fishing nets that then can be depolymerized and then made into new fishing nets. And this global challenge is really highlighting that. So how specific, I guess, is this Plastic Eye going to be? Can you identify where there are high levels of certain kinds of plastic pollution, or is this more of a general tool? And have you been working with any of the NGOs that are doing that type of cleanup work?
Cool, thanks for that. So yeah, we are working with some of the NGOs doing the kind of ocean cleanup operations. So some of the big ones that you may have heard of or seen on the BBC in the last few weeks. And in terms of specificity, probably the first step is that we're identifying plastic and debris and classifying that and separating that from other types of stuff in the ocean. So quite often you get what we call kind of slicks of ick, which is lots of different stuff mixed in. But it is in our roadmap to be able to differentiate between different kinds of plastic. So whether that's between, whether it's bottles, nappies, or whether it is ghost gear or fish aggregating devices, this kind of thing. That's going to require new instruments to be in orbit called hyperspectral instruments, which have a lot more spectral resolution for us to look at the specific spectra of individual items. So it's on the roadmap.
Hi, Margaret Bates from OPRL. Mine's a sort of two-parter.
So first bit is, how much do you think that government plans to label all compostables as do not recycle will limit the public acceptance of your solution? And also, I was quite surprised to hear so many of you refer to your solution as being biodegradable, because there's quite a lot of calls for that term to be banned because of its association with greenwashing.
It's very, sorry, I couldn't quite hear your question. Was the last part about biodegradability versus compostability?
No, 2 parts. One.
Margaret, could you make sure you're using the mic so everyone can hear? Thank you.
Sorry. The first part is, do you think that having to label all compostables as do not recycle will limit the uptake of your solutions or confuse consumers? And secondly, I was surprised that so many of you referred to your solution as being biodegradable when there's quite a lot of calls now to ban that term because of its association with greenwashing.
Yeah, I think our key goal, and I think, you know, there's a lot of discussion around plastic-free, for example. You know, we are focusing always on the fact that we want, number one, conventional recyclability. And I think that's really the goal, whether it's a paper-based product or a plastic-based product. So I think that's a lot of focus on first objective is conventional or recyclability. That's number one. Regarding, you know, compostability versus biodegradability, and if it's compostable, biodegradable, banning the fact it's recyclable, I think there will be a problem with that. I think in terms of compostability and biodegradability, it is a challenge right now, what you say in a meeting like this, because often you also get hit by compostability refers to types of compostability, whether it's industrial compostability or home compostability, whether it's anaerobic or aerobic biodegradability. So it's a challenge. I know the BPI are focusing on really compostability, and I think maybe that's the way to go long term. So the jury's out for me, but I think ultimately we refer to biodegradability, but ultimately all of our products, we will be testing for some form of compostability.
Do any of the projects want to comment? Lucy?
It's a really good question. I think especially when it comes down to like consumer packaging, interestingly, in like reference to your question about uptake, consumer packaging is often thrust on consumers. That it's not really in there. They're not going to be like, oh, that one's this, so I'm going to choose this one. It's often, especially in what we're doing with this project, it's thrust on them. So I think in terms of uptake, I don't know if that will affect it, but if we were to look at who our, like in terms of uptake, who our customers are, I think extended producer responsibility will actually have more of an impact on uptake, because it will be the companies that are like, right, we now have to take ownership of this. So how can we choose a packaging solution that's going to be easy for us to take ownership of that?
Thanks.
Yeah, so on the issue with compostability, obviously, you know, there isn't the scale for all plastics to be turned into compostable materials at the moment. So that's why we're designing our products so that they can go into multiple waste streams, whether that's home compost, industrial compost, or recycling. Obviously, there's, you know, better waste streams that can go down, but the idea is we have a product that can go into any of those waste streams and be better than what's currently on offer. In terms of biodegradability, for people who work specifically in this space, when we talk about biodegradability, we talk about can it biodegrade as fast as cellulose. I think the issue with greenwashing is the regulation and industry-wide standard doesn't recognise that. That's an ISO test, it doesn't recognise it, and they have much sort of looser, if any, sort of like regulations and what you can say. So that's why you start hearing companies which are using materials which are plastic and claim biodegradable. It's because they can get away with it. But if regulations changed and made, you know, strict rules on who could say and advertise biodegradable, then there are materials that are like that.
Okay, any other questions for the panel?
Thanks. I'm Emily Nichols from the Association for Renewable Energy and Clean Technology. We have a lot of members who carry out composting at commercial scale and who carry out anaerobic digestion. And just on this point about labelling and claims, if a product is being developed to be put on the market, it really needs to be clear which standard it conforms to that sets pass-fail criteria for a biodegradation environment that is relevant for the products being targeted for. And anything that is designed to be home composted or industrially composted must meet one of the standards that our industry specifies. Not only that, it must also be certified by an independent certifier. Anaerobic digestion, that's an area that we're working on, and there is content in the current European standard for, let's call it compostable packaging, that is being actively worked on at the moment. And there are some other standards in place looking at biodegradation or designed for item biodegradation in specific environments such as agricultural mulch films that are designed to degrade in situ on soil after the use of the film. So there's a standard for that and there's a certification system for that. So if there are any people that would like to talk to us some more or the BBIA some more about correct labelling, then please do so because it's becoming ever more important. We do recognise there's also a sorting and disposal and labelling challenge on our hands, but if we are to make packaging production and plastics production more sustainable, then we really have to get this right. Thanks.
Thanks, Emily. I think that's a plug for when we do get to the coffee break shortly. Maybe go and have a chat with Emily if you have questions or thoughts to be shared on this matter. Any other questions? Right, we'll go to. If you just wait for the microphone to come to you, there we go.
Philip Law, British Plastics Federation. It's just a comment for Plastic Eye. Are you aware of the work done by Thames 21 in the River Mersey, looking at identifying the sources of plastics litter in the River Mersey? I thought that there could well be some useful parallel experience there for you to draw on.
Okay, lovely, thanks for that. I'll come and have a chat to you about it.
A couple more questions. We go to Jeff, who has the mic.
Thank you. Yes, good morning, everyone. Jeff Brighty from Mura Technology. We're developing the first commercial scale chemical recycling plant up in Teesside that Sir Duncan mentioned. It's back to Plastic Eye. Happily, I also sit on a project board for a programme called Pisces, which is another UKRI funded programme focusing in on Indonesia, and they're doing a lot of spatial mapping. So that's Brunel University led, Plymouth University is involved, Leeds and others. It's an integrated programme, and I'd be happy to connect you to the lead, Professor Susan Jobling, who is doing a very good piece of work on land to sea exports, and I think I'd like to talk to you about your technology.
Okay, absolutely. Thanks for. I think on both of those for us, yeah, having training data is always super helpful and one of the bottlenecks in our development. So anything which has been done on land can be super helpful for what we develop from space. Then.
Lovely. And I think Marcus next.
Yeah, Marcus Gover from Minderoo Foundation. First of all, on the satellite monitoring, we run something called Global Plastics Watch, which is aimed at land, not ocean, but worth checking on that. But my question was really about, I think this is a really important area, looking for alternatives. You know, we know that flexibles are very difficult to recycle. They are the problem, they're the growth area. So finding an alternative to it just seems critical. But what they have to do is we have to be sure that they will properly degrade in environments where they may end up. So what are you doing about testing your products to make sure that 10 meters down in the ocean, they are still going to disappear and not cause harm? Buried in the soil, that's going to be the case. My other concern is that have we got sustainable feedstocks for these? If they're going to replace at scale, and if it's half of single-use plastic, we need a lot of this, then have you got the sustainable feedstocks which could produce these things?
I guess that's the question for me. Yeah, thank you for the question. So yes, we work on different technology at Plan C, but this is our water-soluble technology, which is essentially a film, yes, and it's waste-free because it will dissolve. So it's a film that I can't discuss much about. It's basically made of seaweed. So there's plenty of feedstock. Currently, we get the seaweed from Scotland, but there's plenty in that kind of on the north part. There is plenty of seaweed. Yes, I can say that. And as I said, it's petroleum free, so it does cause no harms at all. And if you think that, we just ran some focus group, and some of the issues were like, okay, great, if it doesn't dissolve and goes there in the drain, will it block the drain? I mean, it dissolves in less than a minute, so it's not an issue at all. So that's what I can say, yes.
Did any of the other projects want to come in on Marcus's comments? James?
Yeah, so in terms of the biodegradability in different environments, so there is ISO accredited tests for all manner of different environments, including marine, including soil, including fresh water. Again, it's not regulated, so people have to do these tests, and they're not sort of widespread public knowledge. And on the question on sustainable feedstock, so we're using plant proteins. So obviously proteins, it can be used as a food material. So for food applications, so we can make flexible films that are actually edible. So for those applications, and also microcapsules to replace plastic microcapsules. For those applications, we need an edible material. For other ones where you don't want an edible material, such as the coatings we're going to use in this grant, so we can extract protein directly from plant waste. So we're working a bit with the cosmetics industry, so they, take plant matter and extract lots of oils and stuff like that for their different toiletries, and they have all this waste material that then we can take on, and we can take the protein out of that and we can use that. But there's a whole manner of other non-food grade protein sources and agricultural waste that we can use as well.
Super, thank you. I think we've got time for one more question, and then a break looms. Yes, gentleman here.
Tom Mockridge from Recora. Is there anything like the scale of biomaterial available to get close to replacing even a reasonable chunk of the amount of plastic, 400 million tonnes, whatever it is, of plastic that is raw plastic that's fed into the system every year?
It's a great question. This is one of the big challenges we all, I think, face, because trying to scale up to anywhere near plastic production is going to take some time. Plastics had 100 years head start, but the previous question, I think, tackles some of these issues, which is, what is your feedstock? Is it available in huge quantities? Is it consistent? Because without that, we are always going to struggle to create a large-scale, consistent end product that replaces plastic. My own personal view is that it will come, and obviously part of the funding that we've received will go towards that scaling up procedure, and hopefully we'll get over some of those hurdles.
I think, when it comes to replacing plastics, you have to take into consideration all the different solutions. So you've got the bioplastics, but then also recycling is going to be an important part of that. But then again, it's sort of on the bioplastic side, it's that incremental step. So we're not going to be able to replace every different kind of plastics. They've got all different properties from the start. I like to use the example of, if you've got a kettle with, it's thermo-resistant plastic, you're not going to have your kettle made out of plant protein anytime soon. But there are certain applications which are easier for us to replace, and then as time goes on, we can sort of build and target more and more different plastics.
Yeah, I'm just building on that. It's about time we diversify the feedstock of these kind of materials. We've relied on oil for too long. We've seen where that's got us. So I think there's space for lots of different solutions that have lots of different feedstocks, and I think the combination of all of those will be enough to provide alternatives that can scale sustainably.
I agree with you, Lucy, actually, because I think at this place, there is space for all of us, that we talk about different feedstock. I mean, like replacing plastic and the amount of it, it's going to take years, well, decades probably. So I think it's just a matter of time, and it's good that we're focusing on different alternatives, different feedstock that will give us more chance actually to reach that.
Cool, thank you. One other thing that our technology is able to identify is sargassum seaweed, and it itself is being used as a, a kind of part of a feedstock for building bioplastics, and is occurring in huge plumes, as you've probably heard, off the coast of Florida and the like. So there are large volumes of raw material in that respect, at least.
Super. Right, well, I think we will thank our projects for the materials and measurement part of this session. Join me in thanking them. That brings us to the all-important mid-morning coffee break. You've got about half an hour to go and recharge. If you've heard from a project that you would love to know more about, you've heard from 2/3 of the projects funded through this competition now. So we will be returning to hear from the final 5 projects. We ask you to be back in here about 12:05. We'll be herding you in this direction. Please do go and enjoy the break. Thanks, everybody. That was great.
It's good to see you all back. You've had a refill, pun intended, for this session, because it's all about reuse and refill. Well, I'm going to start with something about behavior. Convenience, on-the-go, food, shopping, recycling, picking stuff, food. As humans, we're a bit of a weird species, and we've evolved into that kind of species that loves its convenience. And certainly over the last decades, it's happened, and we're a bit lazy, and we're just kind of like love picking things on the go. Convenience is our thing. And standing here in this temple of science, I do wonder what Charles Darwin will make of us. And anyway, so that love for convenience has had amazing impact on packaging trends. With an increase in single-use plastic packaging and all sorts of other packaging, this has kind of caused all sorts of troubles. And there is definitely a need for having more sustainable packaging solutions. And that includes, sorry, I've lost my thread completely. Forgive me. So all this kind of packaging, it helps us with our daily lives, and it's massively impacted on packaging and things. And reuse and refill have been a massive priority for the SSPP program, not least because if you look at the waste hierarchy, beyond preventing and reducing packaging, and the next best thing you can do is reuse and refill. It's also one of the, 2 of the targets in the UK Plastic Pact talk about reuse, so we definitely need to have 100% reusable, recyclable, or compostable packaging. But more importantly, the Pact is targeting, is aiming for the elimination of all problematic and unnecessary single plastic packaging, and that's through redesign and new delivery models such as reuse. We've already got in our cohort of SSPP-funded projects a number of reuse and refill projects. Some of them are here today. It's great to see them. Some of them have done large-scale multi-retailer trials of refill. Others have looked at technology, smart technology to trace packaging throughout the supply chain and throughout the consumer chain as well. This is by far one of the greatest challenges because, as I said, we're quite lazy humans, and everything has been designed around us not to fit reuse and refill. So it's a really great challenge, not least around the logistics, getting the cost down of it to match something that would fit what we currently have in packaging systems and in cost of packaging. The hygiene around it, the washing and cleaning of these reusable containers and packaging is a major issue. And so the projects you're going to hear from today, they're tackling exactly all these issues. Some of them have got applications in our groceries shopping. Others target the on-the-go or fresh meal deliveries. And they're looking at the technological issues, the hygiene, the antibacterials, making sure that if we do use reusable containers, making sure that it's absolutely clean. And the most important things of all is anything around behavior, consumer engagement and behavior, because it's great to kind of want to have a lot of reuse and refill coming up. But obviously, we need to get people engaged with this. So some of them are also looking into the behavior change side of this. So without further ado, as before, we'll start with Safia.
Excellent. Do you want us to stand up?
It's up to you. You can sit or stand.
Okay, well, I'll just shuffle here. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Safia, founder and CEO at Club Zero, and I've seen quite a few folks who I know, and it's quite heartwarming. I've been in this game for too long. Club Zero started its journey 4 years ago, having won the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Prize for New Plastics Economy. That was the first amount of funding into the business, and we've been scaling since. Come a long way. We're returnable packaging. We provide the full system. So we provide the reusable packaging, we design and develop that in-house. So we have developed reuse standards, and we know exactly how to compete with disposable packaging, and we work across food and beverage. We supply the entire service, so we deliver the packaging, we collect it, we wash it, and we redistribute. We've done a life cycle assessment, so we know that we use only half the carbon to compostable packaging and other unrecyclable plastics packaging, which is fantastic. So that brings me to how big are we? How much have we done? We've only saved about 2.2 million items of single-use plastics, which I feel is minuscule considering how much we consume on a daily basis, which is in the billions. So we have a very long way to go. Even though we feel we've done a lot, we still feel like this is just scratching the surface. Very grateful for the support and funding from UK Innovate and to bring all the stakeholders together and help us develop new products that we can engineer. One of our largest clients, which we see immense opportunity, is with Just Eat on the delivery side, low friction points, making it easier for customers to opt in and select what they want. We've worked in retail. It's one of the hardest areas to crack. We've also operate across universities, so UCL is one of our biggest university campuses. And we're very, very excited and thrilled. We know this is a very, very difficult thing to kick off, and we hear that every day and all the time, but we know that brands and businesses are very keen to talk to us. So the good news is that there's a lot of excitement, but of course, funding is one of the key parts, which is always holding a lot of the companies back. So very excited and grateful, and really excited about the conversations this will bring up. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Paul Cook, and together with my co-founder Mark Holland, I'm co-founder of what we're now called Weekly, and we want to sell you your weekly shop. So we're starting a supermarket, and we'll be the first new supermarket in the UK for 20 years, and the first that will be fully circular. So grocery has an enormous pollution problem, or as we like to see it, a pollution opportunity. 40% of all plastic packaging waste is from grocery shopping. The big 10 supermarkets put about 1 million tons of plastic packaging into the market every year, and only 12% or so of it is recycled. So if you're a consumer, it is very difficult for you to do anything about this. It's very high effort, it's very confusing, and ultimately you need to eat, and the stuff your food and drink comes in is just the stuff it comes in. So what we think the best way to deal with this throwaway packaging problem is to just stop using it altogether. So we're doing a grocery service where all the products that need packaging will come in reusable stuff that we will then collect, wash, and use again. We think we can cover about 80% of a shopping basket when it's mature. So we want to be your main shop, and we want to make it so that your bins are empty. You don't have any throwaway packaging waste after you've done your shopping. This is complicated. The way we operate is out of distributed hubs. We will deliver your order. Your food will come in your containers, which will have your food and drink in. When you've finished consuming them, you would put them back in the outer they came in, and we will collect that when we drop off your next order. So we'll operate on a flexible subscription basis. We're very, very excited to have won this grant. I think it's mentioned earlier when you're in, so we're a mix of software and hardware, and we're selling physical stuff. So it is a difficult environment to start a business in anyway, and when you're doing hardware, even harder. So this grant, it funds our pilot. So we're going to be running our first pilot hub with this funding, and very, very grateful, very excited to have got it. So we think it helps us to check. What we'll be doing in the pilot is understanding what we think is probably one of the harder things when it comes to circular stuff, which is just get people to use it. So there's so much cool stuff happening in materials and tracking and software and stuff, but make the system easy enough for customers to use it, we think is one of the core challenges, and that's kind of what we think we can solve. So thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Matin Mohseni. I'm here with my co-founder Reza. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm co-founder of Codicode. We have developed 3 ISO certified technologies which are killing viruses and bacteria in seconds of contact. We are a team of 20 scientists based in Haverhill near Cambridge. And we've won 8 Innovate UK grants, 3 of which are related to plastic packaging. And the problem we're trying to solve is the mistrust of using reusable packaging due to the hygiene issues, viruses and bacteria, which is reinforced particularly during COVID. So the grants that we've won have been focusing on solutions which can be incorporated either during the manufacturing process or during the wash process. So the first technology that we developed was coating, which could be applied during each wash cycle of reusable cups and packagings used in festivals, and also football stadiums, which could be reused using a circular model. The second one that we've just developed is basically impregnate technology, which we put our antimicrobial into plastic films that can be injection molded into plastics and can be washed more than 100 times without using antibacterial efficacy. And the third technology that we just won the grant on is a master batch, which incorporates our antimicrobial technology, which is not using any silver or copper or anything which is not environmentally friendly. And all the materials are food grade and biodegradable. So we've developed this as part of the Innovate UK grants, and we're very grateful for all of these grants. Nice to meet everyone here.
Hi everyone, my name is Joe. I'm here with my tech lead today, Joseph, who's very cool. I'm from Collie, and Collie is an impact startup, and what we do is to provide all the software and hardware to make reusable systems simple, accessible, and fun in closed-loop environments. So we mostly work in canteens and also in events in places such as HQs of big banks or NHS trusts, etc. The big problem that we are trying to solve here is actually some learnings that we got from a previous Innovate UK grant, also from SSPP, which is that even though people are very, very willing to use reusables, there is a barrier to make the whole thing a lot more simpler and user-friendly so that the adoption is a lot higher. So what we're developing this time for our project, there's actually 3 phases to it. The first phase is we're trying to do an HCD project where we'll be able to look at the different barriers and behaviors around reusable. The second phase is then is to develop the integration and the technology to improve it so that it can be more user-friendly and less complicated for everyone, essentially. And then the third one, we're running a trial across different sites to try and, test and learn. So yeah, very grateful for the grants. It's been an immense help, and thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Ella from Top Up Truck. Top Up Truck is a mobile zero-waste shop launched in August 2020 with the aim of making it easier for people to shop without plastic packaging by bringing the refill store to their door on an electric vehicle. Top Up Truck overcomes some of the key barriers to refill adoption, namely getting heavy containers to the shops and kind of finding the time to do so, but while still allowing customers to buy only as much as they need and to buy on impulse. It also increases the visibility of refill in the streets and makes the experience fun and engaging. We've partnered with UAL, conducting a study into how the business model can be refined into a scalable MVP. And we will be using human-centered design methods to investigate what prevents people from using it, a service like this, and what encourages them to do so. We will use this insight to make improvements to the model across the digital experience, comms, truck design, and product range. And then in terms of the team, we've got Rosie Hornbuckle from UAL, who's a postdoc research fellow in sustainable design and will provide the research methodology. We've got Katrina, who's a PhD researcher in consumer behavior within the circular economy at Imperial, who will be doing a deep dive into the behavior science. We've got Megan, who's here today, who is our internal research champion, and then we've got Liz, Tara, and Josh on commercial optimization, data, and life cycle analysis. So we contribute to UK Plastic Pack Target 1 by eliminating problematic or unnecessary single-use packaging, and the project could have a significant impact on Target 1 if scaled. One top-up truck operating at capacity could eliminate the need for 175,000 pieces of plastic per year, or 5.25 tonnes in our estimation. And at the end of the project, we plan to scale quickly but equitably through social franchising. We're all really excited to get stuck into this project and further our vision of making plastic reduction a fun and communal activity, and we're very grateful for the grant from Innovate.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. These projects are so exciting. So we've now got time for questions. So you still have the two roving mics, and they're coming to you if you raise your hand. Go ahead. One to Margaret down there.
Hi, I've just got, Margaret Bates from OPRL. Just a question about the use of antimicrobial coatings. What work did you do to minimise the risk of antimicrobial resistance, which is a massive concern?
That's an excellent question. So one of the sort of main criteria that we always take into consideration when starting a new project is using actives which do not produce any resistance and are not widely used. Because we know the fact that if something is not even associated with resistance now, but is widely used, it's very likely that it will develop resistance in the near future. So that's one of the things we are very cautious about.
Any more questions? Jeff.
Thank you. This is for Safio. So we've met some years ago when I was in Plastic Oceans. So as a serial innovator in this space, I'm just wondering, what have you learned and what's brought you to this stage in your innovation journey? Because I remember you from Cup Club, I think, back in 2017, 18.
Gosh, I've got so many white hairs around this. What have I learned? I think one of the key things which I'd love to share, because we're all on the same journey, so I don't see this as a competitive environment at all. Retail is really hard. Retail is one of the hardest areas because for us, it's a borrow system. So we require people to register, be an entity that is going to take something from a retail location. That requires a lot of activation in terms of marketing, awareness building, et cetera, ad spend. And the utilization rates were about 2%. So we had retail outlets open and you could use the Club Zero app, the consumer app, and go into any of these, but we just felt, we had fantastic brands that were paying us on a monthly basis for being able to stock Club Zero, but the usage was so low that we've ended up just focusing on the other segments, i.e. scaling delivery, scaling closed environments, so universities, offices, etc., because again, there's less friction on how a customer can obtain and borrow a product. So that would be my key learning here. And I don't have the exact understanding on when that tipping point will come. Of course, we've seen in Germany and France the retail, but that's a legislation-led thing. But again, if I'm looking at the numbers of a lot of the startups, we've done, sort of reverse engineered their numbers and seen that they've got a really, really wide spread of retail presence. So it sounds like a fantastic KPI, like 3,000, 5,000 locations. But when you tot up their entire use and you split it, on average, they're basically selling about 1 or 2 containers per location. And so you become a very asset-heavy company. You require sort of a lot more funding, because you're basically spreading your assets across so many locations, it just doesn't work. So those businesses are going to struggle. You're better off focusing on, now I'm sharing go-to-market strategy, but talking too much. But you're better off just concentrating that, because right now we design all our products, so those assets sit on our balance sheet, which is quite expensive. And then we do all the servicing, etc. So we're very careful with where we send our packaging, because we want that velocity, which is basically our measure of how quickly that product comes back to us. We want that loop to be very short as possible, 5 days, 10 days. We don't want it 30 days, we don't want it 90 days, because that asset, every time it comes around, we're going to make revenue. So that's one of our biggest learnings, and I hope that is helpful for everybody here, save you a lot of time and hassle and pain. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thanks. We still have time for more questions. Yeah.
Jeff Mackey, Plastics Europe. A general question, because I'm really interested in this space around reuse and refill models. We've seen autonomous vehicles on our streets. There's a number of pilot areas in the UK that are delivering groceries and the rest. Within what you're working on, have you considered how that technology and systems thinking will affect the whole market in the next 5 to 10 years?
I can just quickly answer to that, and I'll pass it on to you guys. I'm sure you have something to add. It doesn't impact it, doesn't change it in any way. So the delivery mechanisms, whether they're autonomous or it's a human being delivering it, it's still going to leave a location, which is where we deliver our packaging to. So they'll fulfill the order. They might put it into an autonomous vehicle that will go somewhere. That transaction doesn't change whether it's autonomous or a human, not for us. But I'm curious to hear what others might have to say about it.
Yeah, similarly for us, it wouldn't materially change things. We're going to be using EVs. We're going to deliver quite a lot of stuff to all our customers. We're going to sell everything, fruit, veg, meat, dairy, bakery, all the dry stuff as well. So we need to drive small vans. But it's an interesting area. As it won't really materially impact. So.
Basically for us, because at the moment the model is using reusable packaging in festivals and football stadiums, there is a little bit of addition in terms of collecting and transport. But we've done life cycle analysis, which shows that above 80 times of reuse, we are overall more environmentally friendly, and at the moment we're reusing more than 100 times. So that's the issue that we've tried to address.
Because we mostly work in closed loop systems right now, so I don't think like automatic vehicles have a lot of impact on us. I feel like if we're moving into like delivery or other models, then it could potentially make adoption a bit easier with decreasing cost for delivery, because reuse is quite labor heavy. If you're trying to run the whole system, you need to deliver things somewhere, get it back, wash, and then deliver it back, distribution, automation. So it will be interesting to see where it goes, and I think that the sector itself will, develop as that develops.
Hiya. Yeah, I mean, truthfully, it's not something that we've looked into a huge amount, but I think it could offer exciting opportunities in the future. We've experimented around our sort of core model with pre-fill options as well. So I think, yeah, it does offer an opportunity for pre-fill direct to people's doors.
Oh, just down there.
Behind you. Can you hear me? Yeah, Sarah Greenwood from Sheffield University. So it's a question for the delivery companies. We know that the delivery models work more efficiently in areas of high population. Do you have plans to look at maybe servicing rural areas and how you're going to assess that?
We're going to do our best, is the kind of best answer. So most of the population, 85% of the population lives in cities. The other thing in the UK is there's not a physically large place. So the way we're going to build out our hubs, we think we need about 25 to serve the country. So this is the best way to do grocery delivery efficiently. It's how even Tesco do it like this now. They call them urban fulfillment centers. Our hubs are based on two things. One is how far will an electric van drive, and the other is the size of the hubs based on how dense is the area. So we think we can get coverage in most of the country using this pattern. It just depends on exactly where we put them and stuff. And things like, we haven't really mapped it with drive time and stuff yet. We've mostly done it with ONS data and population densities and areas and stuff. But the UK is small, so definitely feasible. It's just that the one sort of caveat is efficient grocery delivery is mostly based on tight drops. So when people are further apart, it becomes slightly more expensive. But ultimately, yes, we'd love to do it.
So we can't make the unit economics work from a logistics perspective outside a certain radius of a city. So we will operate anywhere within the M25, which at the same pricing, and that makes sense. Anywhere outside the M25, we basically turn around to a major distributor and we say, we've got a really fantastic case for you. One of your largest clients wants Club Zero, like say, for example, in Milton Keynes. And we're not going to supply into Milton Keynes, but if you have already a client that is in Milton Keynes and you've got those routes, then it makes sense for you to distribute it and put an additional margin on it. So that's how we would distribute product beyond the zoning of a city. And our LCA is measured on the framework of within a city. So hence it only makes sense to leverage existing distribution routes because those are really well-oiled systems. They have distribution centers. They have the trucks are moving back and forth. They're delivering usually food and non-food items, and they will just add Club Zero as a supplier onto their list. So that's the way that we're approaching it.
Okay, we had a question in front row there.
Thank you. Sophie Walker, Disposal. So obviously the idea with the reuse and refill is that the stuff is being reused and refilled, but at some point it will come to the end of its life. I'm wondering, what have you thought about in terms of how you deal with that and what material choices you're making and how you're communicating that with people?
That's a really good question because that's kind of the first question I had when we were starting off. What will we do with all these things at the end of its life cycle? I think the action that we have taken is that we work very closely with waste management companies since the beginning of our journey so that we can ensure that the materials choice that we choose are highly recyclable and highly desirable even at the end of its usage. So what we do is that we have very granular data tracking all of the assets to make sure that they're used to their full potential. We work with different researchers to make sure that the behavior around it, which is much more delicate about like the appearances and when people consider it like to be too battered up, we do a lot of research on that. And then at the end, we work with those recycling waste management companies to make sure that they are actually recycled and turned into things. So for example, our clients don't take on the responsibility of the end of life cycle of our products. We do. We collect them and make sure that those are recycled. And we work with different manufacturers to make sure to like essentially explore recycled PP and also other recycled materials to be incorporated into the system. And hopefully that answers your question.
Maybe a small thing to add. So we're a little bit behind that, so we have deliberately not picked the answer yet. So part of our pilot is testing materials. So we think there's a big piece of work around customers coming on the design journey with us almost. In that when we did our life cycle analysis for this grant, we did a couple of plastics, we did glass. We didn't add metal to it, we'd probably test some. And the idea is to try a lot of different things with some broad principles in mind. We'd like it to be recyclable at the end. We're not doing embedded RFID chips, we're using etched QR codes to track things so that its end of life is not affected and stuff. So, but generally speaking, there's so much cool work happening in materials. We decided not to say we've got the answer for that. We want to test a lot of different things. Polypropylene scratches and taints, glass is heavy. What do people care about? And there was a running theme at the beginning of like, you've got to make it easy and you've got to make it, so that stuff is very important when it comes to adoption. So, yeah.
A question over here.
Hi, Robin from the University of Birmingham. I suppose I'm thinking about the way that you market these things and your kind of potential consumers and customers, and to what extent you rely on articulating the more kind of altruistic, sustainable benefits of what you're doing, and to what extent you kind of have to sell that the more personal, selfish benefits that people might see, like improved convenience, or if there's any kind of cost savings. And I suppose be interesting to hear what you think the right balance is there in terms of engaging with potential customers.
we just changed our name from Zero to Weekly Shop. So like, sort of, this is part of what that is about. Slightly less preachy, do more of a job of explaining what we do and stuff. But definitely has to form a real core part of it. We think our early adopters will still be very focused on it. Ultimately, we'd love to be in a situation where we sell your groceries that just happen to be in reusables. The service is amazing, delivery is amazing, you nail online grocery. The containers give you an opportunity to design for use much better than throwaway packaging. So things stay fresher for longer, you can stack them nicely, all this kind of cool stuff you can do. So the packaging should become a selling point itself in the future and stuff. So important, but also important to come across as a good service generally, or do a good job with the basic service. So, did you want
to? Yeah, I think so. A lot of basically the focus of our study is kind of going to essentially be around that. Re London did a study on grocery shopping and found out that they sort of ranked the order of things that were important to people in terms of choosing where they do their grocery shop. The top four are essentially price, value for money, ease of use, and proximity to where they live. So I think, we're going to sort of do a deep dive into exactly how to communicate these things to people and to what extent that sustainability message is a sort of, an enabler or not.
So this is perfect timing because we've started to experiment here. Hannah's just in front of you. She can tell you more in detail. I'll save ourselves the embarrassment. But we've started to take a lot of inspiration from other influencers and how do they communicate the difference. I'm not a believer in altruistic. I think fundamentally, if you're looking at, the X and Y axis for success is cost and convenience. So how is your product really, really hitting on cost? We've just found out 2 weeks ago that in some instances we are 30% cheaper than compostable packaging now because of EPR, which means that as a brand you have to add that cost, and so your prices have gone up. And so a lot of, when we get those price comparisons, we get asked to put those price comparisons together for clients. So that's fantastic news, and that will only go up. So altruistic, I'm not a believer. I'd love to think that you could guilt your way into people buying it, but I don't think that's the right way to sell. So, and then on the convenience side, we provide everything. So that you get the packaging, you get it collected, you get it distributed. That's what customers need. They don't just want, 5 options that they can put together. We're a one-stop solution. So based on that kind of marketing, what we're trying to experiment is a new thing called I'm Sussed, You're Not, which is how do we show what the life of somebody who is sustainable, what are they doing? But then how do you build language for that which is non-offensive? And what are the ways that we can connect with audiences in a fun, engaging way? So being sustainable, those are 2 words. It's quite mouthful. It doesn't roll off the tongue. So we're looking at words like susting. It's a verb. I'm susting. It's a bit of entertainment for everyone here. And then what is the opposite of that? Who's like wasting and throwing things away? They're a waster. So we're playing with this right now. We're trying to build content, thinking about what is a language that will resonate with the Gen Z and with other communities of people. How can we describe what good looks like and what bad looks like, but without making people feel guilty for or into buying from Club Zero? I don't think that's the right approach. I think just creating more information out there to make them excited about the brand and experience it and feel that it's cheaper or it doesn't hurt their bottom line when you're buying it. I think that's generally our approach.
Thank you. I'm afraid we've run out of time for any more questions. So if you have any burning questions for these projects, please use the time during the networking session and over lunch. Thank you very much. Join me in giving a round of applause to these projects. Just move and go back there.
Yeah, if you want. Yeah. Go on, and I'll sit here. Tell us again. You're right, you're in the right place. Okay. Okay, this is quite daunting and a lovely place to be, and reminds me very much of the Christmas lectures. So I'm going to take it a little bit further and think Christmas cake. Okay, and we'll play on that in a little bit later. So my name is Sally Becken, and I founded and run the UK Circular Plastics Network at Innovate UK KTN. This session is about us being stronger together. It's about supporting you and the collaborations that we are all having with each other. And can I just say a wonderful big thank you to everybody, because it's not possible to do this job unless you all share, which you do. You share, and that's the most wonderful thing of all. Connecting with us at the KTN and connecting with each other is actually the kind of part of the cake that holds all the currants and the raisins and the nuts together. And the nuts, Tony, where are you? Nuts, you're the nuts. But every single project, every single individual, you are the fruit in the cake, and the thing that's holding you all together is that you all care really, really passionately about doing the right thing, making plastics more sustainable, keeping them out of the environment, and not sending them to incineration or landfill. So it's great to look at you all. Yeah, you're a tasty cake, tasty cake. Okay, so in this session, KTN, we're here to support you. And what we do is we try and help you make your project stronger, and we'll do that by making collaborations, talking through the subject of your proposal, and sharing our knowledge of the system. And we get the knowledge of the system from you as a whole, from the cohort and from the community. So it's wonderful to have that. And we're here to help you before, during, and after your grant funding money is either there or has finished. So don't stop asking us questions. You pay for us in your taxes, so yeah, use us for the most as you can. And there's also an organisation called Innovate Edge, and they're there to help you as well. I can see Kevin up there, and there may be others from Innovate Edge in the audience. And they are business advisors, also funded from Innovate UK, who will give you longer-term support, one-on-one. They'll talk about your business. They're geographically based. You'll get an advisor to come and talk to you and support you. And I would say, please, please help them. They'll think about commercial strategy and growth of your business, which I hope all of these projects go on to have, which is, massive growth and impact that's adopted so that we make a difference. So we have three fantastic speakers. One is from a membership organisation, one from academia, and one from business. And they're going to talk a little bit about how collaboration has helped them. And we're going to start with Anne Hitch from Recoup. And actually, not all the projects that apply into Innovate UK funding are funded. There's not enough money, but they're still really good. And for me as an individual helping people, it's often quite disappointing when you think, oh, they haven't got the money, but they were great. I mean, Ella, who was sitting here before, it's been funded this time, but I helped her the last time. And it's really fantastic to see that once you understand more of the system, understand what's holding the cake together, the matrix. Oh dear, I'm going back to polymer chemistry now and fillers and additives. But anyway, it's a cake you can't eat if it's a polymer. Anyway, never mind. The project that didn't get funded, unfortunately, from Thames 21 is actually something Anne's going to talk about that's gone on from that process to give us some really good information. So,
Lovely. Thank you very much, Sally. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to be in a session talking about collaboration and partnership, because if anyone knows of Recoup and they know what we do, they know that that's kind of through our DNA. I think it's deep-rooted in what Recoup are. So Recoup have been involved with a number of SSPP granted projects, some of which have been successful, some haven't. One that I led last year, again, proves that sometimes that funding can actually be the catalyst to further work. It's not always the end, it's the beginning. We had a project last year working with Kent, 13 Kent councils, Kent Understanding Plastics, which was a behaviour change, understanding what citizens do in terms of communications and what type of communications we should use and what resonates best. That has led to a further project which will be launched in May of this year, working with a local authority in the northeast, and which has been funded We've got some funding from the BPF, some funding from waste management. So that's another, it's just a way of which the whole programme and the working with KTN helps us accelerate what we're doing. On other projects, we've been partners, and partnerships are key. Working on the 3 Ps with disposal. The Little Lotto project, we are using some of that knowledge for citizen engagement and communications to assist with that project behind the scenes. So today I am delighted to announce that we are going to be looking into litter composition. This project unfortunately didn't get funded, but the feedback and the help that we get both from Innovate and from KTN to refine that project, it was just so exciting to see how enthusiastic people were about it, that we've been fortunate to gain funding from 2 of our corporate members. The project itself is going to be called, and I need to look at my notes for this because it's a bit of a mouthful, Litter Composition and Pathways Project. So the aim of that is to understand the actual composition of litter, whether that litter is terrestrial or marine, where it comes from, what's its source. And that helps us really to gain an insight both into the societal behaviours behind why people are littering. And we will be looking also at bin composition, so away from home and street bin composition. What do people do it? How are they doing it? We'll be looking at all materials, obviously with a focus of plastics. And I think it's fair to say that one of the things that I used to get a little bit wound up about is I used to have a mantra in business that used to say that if we keep doing things the same way, we will get the same results. And to date, what we seem to do a lot of is to pick litter up and have clean-ups. But we need to understand better the data behind that. What we have not got no comprehensive and all-encompassing methodology in order to collect and analyse data. We need a robust and comprehensive set. We will be working with disposal on that data analysis. We're also going to be doing a bit of innovation. And I think it's fair to say that our previous waste comp analysis we have done in the field, and I've done many of those, and it's a bit of a messy job. So we're looking at artificial intelligence, working with Grey Parrot. What this allows us to do is to do a bigger volume of material in a much shorter space of time and safely, because safety on site with manual waste comp analysis, as you can imagine, it's a bit tricky. And also, along with this is going to allow us to be able to make policy decisions on such things as EPR with that knowledge of what packaging is actually being disposed of in the natural environment, where and how. That will also help us to be able to look at policies to turn the tap off. So if this excites you and you want to have a conversation with Recoup, although we have got 2 supporters, we're always willing to take on more. So I think that gives you a good understanding of where we are in this field. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Anne. That's brilliant. I mean, it's really important that part of what you do when you go through the process of applying for your project funding from Innovate UK or any other funder is that you learn and you're actually strengthening your project. So either it has a better chance for another fund, and there are other funds available from Innovate UK, or as Anne's shown here, that you'll get it funded by some other mechanism. It's that process of going through the thought processes and actually answering the questions that make you think, they focus your mind, they make you find the right partners. So I'd recommend anyone do it, even if they ultimately don't press the submit button. There you go, that's another question. So our second speaker will be Professor Thomas Webb from the University of Sheffield, and he's going to talk about the kind of the interactions between universities and also through businesses and academia. So, you know, I'm not going to say getting outside of your box, but, you know, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm an academic, and I have indeed been invited to think considerably outside my box. And I think the SSPP team have invited me to talk today because I'm part of some multidisciplinary projects, a number of multidisciplinary projects, which has been wonderful to be involved with over the last 5 years. But what they don't perhaps realise is that I am a really good example of an academic who's been brought out of his box. Because prior to being involved in tackling the problem of reducing plastic waste, I was very much the traditional academic. I'd always been at a university. I loved being a psychologist. I did consider that some of the work that I did might have application, but I didn't really consider it my task to do any of that application. I thought that people would read my papers and do the application. And that got me a reasonable way. To blow my own trumpet, I published the second highest, most cited paper in psychology in 2006, and it was on. No, but I say that just to blow my own trumpet, but also to say that the reason I think it was the second most highly cited paper is that it pointed to a problem that everyone knew about, but no scientist had really nailed down, which is that there's a gap between people's intentions and their action. And then I got a grant from the European Research Council, who at that time were a council who were one of the few that weren't particularly concerned about impact. And that grant was on the idea that people bury their heads in the sand and ignore the problem. So it was clear that two big pieces of work that I'd done up to being involved in the in work on reducing plastics waste had application. You know, clearly we've got a context here where people do struggle to translate good intentions into action, and in many instances are burying their heads in the sand. But it took my colleagues, and you can thank or blame Tony Ryan at the back there for bringing me into this, because I think he recognised that part of the challenge was to bring in behavioural scientists like myself to work within these teams. And so I think what I wasn't prepared for is just quite how multidisciplinary this was. And it wasn't just a token gesture that you assemble a group of academics from different disciplines, a group of different ists, psychologists, linguists, geographists, and get them to it. But there were real genuine dependencies. And so one example of a genuine dependency that we're working on at the moment is that materials have to be used a certain number of times. So our chemical and biological engineers have worked out how many times a material needs to be used before it becomes more environmentally beneficial than its single-use alternative. But of course, it being used that many times depends on whether people are willing to use it that many times. You know, and you may have seen in the corridor, Sarah, who I work closely with, has brought some samples of reusable packaging that shows signs of previous use. And the work that Harriet Baird sat at the back there has done with me has shown that people are relatively unwilling to use containers that show signs of previous use. And so we've also been working with engineers who've been simulating that wear. And so these sort of dependencies, I think, are one of the most exciting things, but also one of the most challenging things with this work. And so it really has been an incredible journey. I mean, I can't believe the wide range of people that I've spoken to over the last 5 years. And we talk about imposter syndrome as academics, you know, should I really be here? And the number of calls I've been on with like people, supermarkets, waste processors, people who make packages and produce of this, people who drive lorries, who build stickers with QR codes and RFID tags. And I just think, and I have to think each time, what am I doing here? And then try to contribute. And it's been really wonderful to see the collaborative nature of those conversations and how people have welcomed the different groups into those conversations and understood that you need to join up all of these things. So the multidisciplinarity isn't just a token gesture, it's genuine dependencies. But it was also, I think, you know, so the team in Sheffield is very multidisciplinary. A lot of people from, should we have a group? Who's in the Sheffield team here? Look at them all. The Many Happy Returns team looking at reusable packaging, and we're a real range of academics. But also we recognise where there are gaps, and so there's a second example of collaboration where we work with other universities. So one of the areas of expertise we recognise is key to reducing plastic waste and key to the success of reuse models was design. And so we've been working with another SSPP-funded project in Loughborough, the Perpetual Plastic for Food to Go project. We've been working with designers at Imperial College, collaborating with them and with Brunel to bring that expertise in. But probably the most classic example of collaboration is between academics who've been dragged slightly kicking and screaming out of their offices into the real world to talk to stakeholders. And first of all, many thanks to Sarah, who co-leads the Many Happy Returns project with me and has been absolutely instrumental in well, she is the link between us academics and the wider group. Many of you will know Sarah and have talked to her, and as a result been forced to talk to some of us academics. But, you know, and I think what's exciting is actually working with these people to try to get something to happen. So we've developed a small-scale scheme for reusing containers for takeaway food and drink at the University of Sheffield. We've been working with a company called Vital and the University Catering Services to create that system, which we can then use to study it, and we can look at the challenges within that system and whether or not it can be scaled. I just want to end by signalling two other key collaborations which I think are important. Nicola Buckland, who sat with Sarah Brew-Garcia, both worked with me on the Compostables project. Many other members of the teams who are working with Hubbub. Where is he here? I'm not going to try and pick everybody out. Where's Tom? Tom from Macora, the waste process on that project. Really exciting, another collaborative project looking at how we can basically make compostable systems a little bit better, collect more of the waste, do so in a way that reduces contamination. And you know, we're doing that on the ground with organisations who are actually using compostable packaging, so that's really exciting. And then the other, so that's a project that's funded by the business-led scheme through SSPP. The other project that we're working with, funded again through the business-led scheme, is with Pragmatic. So Emma's here. They make RFID tags. So looking at the potential of digital tracking systems and what is it that digital tracking can bring to the success of a reuse system. And Recoup are involved in that as well. It's going to be one of the things that I hate about collaborations. My memory is terrible, so there's all sorts of people I've no doubt forgotten who we're working with. But it's been a really exciting journey over the last 5 years, and so I would recommend, if you do know people who need dragging out of their academic offices, or you would like to work with academics, then force yourself upon them, because we're usually quite grateful. Thank you.
Thomas, thank you very much for sharing and actually pointing out people, currants, raisins and nuts in the audience. This is what collaboration is about, and your enthusiasm is fantastic. And I think we should all be excited that we are all working in the same space, and I'm hoping that you're picking up from other people, even if you've got your own project that has defined boundaries, that the boundaries outside, the rest of the cake, is really important, because it's going to influence what you're doing and make the whole as tasty as possible. Let's see how far I can take this. Okay. Often you come across people who don't need to help so much. You know, I often get called, can you introduce me to, or do you know, or what do you think about this? But there are people also who are off on their own and doing their own bits of collaboration. And Sophie, you are one of them. You are very proactive about contacting other people that you know are part of the scene. So if you can explain a little bit about that. So, sorry, Sophie, you're the CEO and founder of Disposal. So if you could talk about that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to set myself a timer, because I know Paul's got his red card, but I am like overly enthusiastic about this stuff. So I'm well, first off, actually, I'm just going to say that I think I'm a really good advert for throwing imposter syndrome out of the window, because I've got to do all sorts of absolutely incredible things, despite sometimes feeling quite uncomfortable, because I've been willing to kind of put my hand up and get stuck in, and I would encourage all of you to do the same, because these are massive problems that we're all dealing with, and we can all help fix them. And I'll come back to that. But I'm here to talk about PPP. We are into phase 2 of it, and both phases have been funded by Innovate UK, and I'm hugely grateful for that, because it is an amazing project that brings together 5 different partners who include Recoup, Open Data Manchester, EcoSurety, and OPRL. And it basically, the whole idea around it is connecting initially the plastic packaging ecosystem, but now the entire packaging ecosystem, to help them to kind of understand and share data much more easily with each other, so that we can actually understand what these materials are that are flowing through our economies as packaging, and start to really move them up the waste hierarchy and do much better things with them. Because we're talking about the entire packaging ecosystem, as you can imagine, we've had to really go all out in trying to get as many people as possible involved in the project. And so we've worked very openly, and we've really encouraged, and as many people as we possibly can to kind of come along to workshops, to talk to us, to interviews, anything they want to do basically to get involved. And that's resulted in, I keep quoting this number, and it's higher now because it keeps going up, but more than 100 stakeholders from more than 50 organisations. And we've had an amazing response from people. And I think that's that's because there's a real challenge here that a lot of people are trying to solve. And I think that people can see the kind of genuine enthusiasm that we as a group of organisations bring to this in trying to really solve it in a holistic and systemic way that is beneficial for everyone. So we're not favouring any particular material or any part of the supply chain or any tagging technology or any kind of, it's about how do we do this all together, and it's not about kind of focusing in any particular area. So it's really great to hear about all the kind of compostables and things like that. We want to talk to you, get in touch with us. It's really great to hear about all the reusable stuff. We want to make sure we're working with that. Please get in touch with us. And all the different recycling technologies and everything like that. So that's kind of how we've been approaching this. And like Sally said, we've really gone out to try and make connections with other projects that are working in this space. What I love about this is I look around the room and there's tons of people that I'm friendly with and that we do things with. And I mean, like One Bin from University of Manchester has been something we've worked really closely with, for example. But there's loads of you I've not met before. What amazing things might we do together that we've only just kind of learned, about each other. So please, I'm here to kind of, I suppose, to say, why should we collaborate? Because these are massive, huge, complex problems, and none of us on our own are going to solve them. Disposal are incredibly committed to this stuff, and we're really excited, as you can probably tell, about doing these things. But we're tiny. We can't do this by ourselves. We can only do this by working with all of you. And so today, I would encourage you to, we're in a room with all these amazing people. Go and talk to them. People that might be competitors, people that might be collaborators you don't know, and without talking to each other, we're not going to kind of make these connections. And I'm amazed that whenever, we really go out of our way to try and find out what's going on in this space and make connections. But even so, constantly surprised by the amount of work that's going on in this area and the different things that are going on that I had no idea about. And so just really make sure to use this opportunity. And after this event, what I would also request is that often people aren't very good at making connections outside of things like this, as in like when you talk to people and you think, oh, do you know what? Have you spoke to so-and-so? That might be interesting. Make that introduction. I plead you to do that, because you don't know, it might come to nothing, but also the amount of introductions we've made to people and then something really amazing's come off the back of it. Not enough people do that. And I urge you to go and make those connections, make those introductions, and be generous with your address books and your contacts. And I think that's probably enough from me in my over-enthusiastic way. But thank you.
Sophie, do you want to come work at the KTN?
I think I've got some spare time. Not.
Yeah. I think you've absolutely nailed it. It is asking those questions. It is being generous. I am hugely thankful in my role that people do share with me, and that helps me to help the rest of you, those connections. So keep doing it between yourselves as well. We've got a little bit of time for questions. I'm just looking at the clock, so I can see Mike over there.
Thanks for the shout out, Sophie, but I actually want to talk to Riku. So what's really interesting is I think I totally agree with Sophie. Every time I go to one of these meetings, I realize that there's people doing fascinating stuff. And it's essential that we try and avoid duplication as much as possible. So just highlighting that in the One Bin to Rule Them All project at the University of Manchester, we've done quite a lot of compositional analysis, and we've done stuff on the reasons behind fly tipping, right? So it'd be great to use that as a foundation for the work that's now being done on the Recoup project, so we can make sure that that's additive in what we're doing, because we're all working to make this push in the right direction.
Exactly. And the more data, the more information, the more intelligence we have, the bigger and the better.
Open data is essential.
Yes, the better robust set of data we can have, which we haven't got at the moment. It's brilliant. Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, are you sure? Oh, here. And then
Philip Law, British Plastics Federation. It's a wider question, really. This is probably the best time to raise it. But what visibility does this collective activity here have at the highest reach of government?
Oh, you're looking at me for an answer.
We did have a Prime Minister not so long ago say famously that plastics recycling isn't working. And I'm sure that if he was aware of the momentum behind this activity and all the great work that's being displayed here, that kind of comment would not emerge and colour, to some extent, the whole approach of government towards the use of plastics.
Okay, I'm just looking to see if anyone else other than me wants to answer. Do you want to take this one, Paul, or not? No? Okay, so thank you. So actually, this is an ongoing 5-year project. Some of the projects have come to fruition, some are ongoing, some have just been announced today. There are case studies and stories coming out from this activity, and I fully believe the team, SSPP, will be growing on that and making sure those stories get shared. In terms of where and how, there's MPs as well, which feed into, higher echelons of government. And we do have a little inroad in there. The UK Circular Plastics Network is mentioned in the parliamentary post notes and things. So just making sure those messages go out as many times as they can to as many MPs as possible is what we've got to do.
Can I make a comment? It was interesting that you highlighted that that particular item that got taken up very heavily by all the media in terms of our previous Prime Minister's comment. Obviously, and there's been a few comments today about people doing things differently. And I think we all, everybody in the room, and whatever level you're at, we all have a kind of a responsibility within this arena on plastics to kind of make sure that the language that we use and the conversations that we have, whether that's in the community, whether that's personally, whether that's in business, that we make sure it's balanced and we make sure that we can get that message out. What we do know when we're talking to the communities is that people still remain, and that word is confused, which has been used a lot. And we need to alleviate that from both the top down and the bottom up, and take the double-pronged approach.
Can I just say that, so we had Grant Shapps, when he was Bay's minister, come to our labs, and we got him to do some recycling, and then he said, but it doesn't look any different afterwards. And I was like, see, even you can do it. So we did that. We do have a policy white paper out. You can get a link to that if you see these sheets anywhere, that kind of then informs it, and it has been hitting a number of MPs' desks, so we are at least trying.
I was just going to add as well that I think all of us that are trying to work on systemic change, it's really important for us to, to do what we can to get the message out there. So, engaging with the departments that do stuff in your space, and it's slow and painful, but yeah, really trying to kind of make those, reaching out and trying to have those conversations, because I think it's on all of us, and we shouldn't be kind of just hoping that Innovate UK are going to do it on our behalf, but really trying to make those inroads ourselves.
Okay, we've got time for one more question because I have to give you some instructions before lunch. So, oh my goodness. Oh, okay.
Switched on? Yeah, I just wanted to come in because at several points this morning, language has been mentioned and communication. So I'm chair of English language at the University of Sheffield and on the Many Happy Returns project with Tom. So I'm part of his multidisciplinary team. And I'm kind of a fish out of water here because I'm, I think, probably one of the very few, if not the only, humanities scholar in the room. But I'm a central part of the multidisciplinary team that Tom's leading at Sheffield. And lots of people are talking about language today, and it's clear that everybody in the room knows that an understanding of language and communication is essential to making change and encouraging consumers to behave differently. But there doesn't seem to be much evidence at work in people's kind of business plans and strategies and research projects. So what I can offer, if anybody wants it, is some expertise in linguistics and a database of over 5.5 million words of language about plastics, which is what we've been using in Many Happy Returns to drive our understanding of how people think about plastics, how they think about their own interactions with plastics, and actually about a massive divergence between how manufacturers and retailers and industry is talking about plastics and how everyday people in their day-to-day lives are talking about plastics. And we found such a contrast in how people like yourselves are talking, using language around plastics, and how the people you're trying to reach understand plastics and their interactions with them. And it's why a lot of these efforts keep falling flat on their faces. So if anyone's serious about language, then let me know and I can help you. But there is a massive range of expertise there for you to draw on if you start talking to people in the humanities. One of the things that we keep repeating on the Many Happy Returns project is that plastic pollution is a human problem, and technological solutions and scientific solutions will only take you so far. To really get behaviour change and a change in the environmental situation, you need to understand human beings and you need to communicate with them properly. And instead of just casting around and experimenting, and in the last panel people were talking about kind of just chucking words out and seeing how they go, you can always base it on some evidence and some expertise, and that's what we're here for. So I'm offering my services to anybody who wants them.
Thank you very much. You've got the offer there, everyone. Like, dive in. Thank you. I want to say thank you to all our speakers, but just after that, I'll tell you what's going on over lunch, if that's all right. So thank you very much to all of our speakers, and Tom and Sophie. So thank you very much. Okay, you thought it was 30 minutes to talk about collaboration, but actually the whole day is about collaboration, so don't be duped. And I'm expecting over lunch that you do a lot of networking and sharing as much as you can so that the cake is held together as strongly as possible. I haven't quite worked out what the marzipan and the icing are yet. But I would also say there are people who aren't in this room who are the alcohol that you pour on the cake as you're maturing it, that also have input that are going to help and strengthen all your projects, so don't forget them. Right, so I don't want to hold you up from lunch for too long, but outside you probably have noticed are the companies and their tables, so do take a look at the things that they brought along to talk about their projects. But there are 5 networking areas, 4 thematic zones and an investment zone. So if you're interested in recycling, by the way, I think you should be interested in all of these zones, so try and cover all of them as much as you can. But we have the Georgian room, which is talking about recycling, reuse and refill in the library, novel materials in the demo room, and films and flexels in the writing room. And the Hammer and Colonel Mustard, I don't know where they are, but okay. And the investment zone is going to be headed up by Jordan and Shima from the KTN. If you want to find out about getting funding for your project, that's a really good place to go. Can I just ask everyone who's KTN and Edge and Investment to put their hands up so that you can see who they are if you want to grab them. Yeah, and actually the SSPP team. So if you didn't know them already. So try and grab them over lunch if you need to ask any questions. In those rooms, there are flip charts. Everything's to play for. If you want any help, don't be frightened to write that down on a post-it note. Make sure it's captured what you're looking for, what support you need, any kind of collaborators, anything at all. They will be collected after us, and I know the team will try and get back to you and make sure that your questions are answered and you're supported as best you can, because one thing is giving you the money, and the other thing is making sure that that money has more impact than you would have imagined in the first instance. So please, won't keep you any longer. Do enjoy your lunch and do network. Thank you.